I think we can start with some basic introductions, some house rules. Welcome everyone for joining us for our 5th webinar for APPNA Merit, Healthcare Research and Innovation in Pakistan, Landscape in Pakistan webinar series. So I'm Janet Berti. I'm a movement disorders neurologist at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. I'm the chair for APPNA Merit for 2021. And I, with my team and colleagues, welcome you all to the 5th webinar. The idea of this webinar series is to introduce various concepts in healthcare research and innovation, mostly within Pakistan, and inviting people who are working in Pakistan or trying to collaborate in Pakistan, and to give you some perspective of what is the landscape of healthcare research, what's the landscape of innovation in healthcare in Pakistan, and how we can all contribute and how can we collaborate. So this is intended to be kind of a learning place and also awareness program, a networking place. Thank you for all joining and being part of this exercise. So generally what we do, we'll plan to do the same. We will in a few minutes invite our speaker and to present a summary of his topic, his ideas with a focus and emphasis of what is being done in Pakistan and what can be done in Pakistan. And afterwards we'll open up for discussion. We'll have our worthy members for merit committee make any comments or ask any questions, and then we'll also go towards you. You can post your questions in the chat box. You can post your questions in Q&A, and we'll try to reach out to those questions and take them into consideration for discussion. Often we run out of time and we don't have enough time to cover everything, but we would love to. You can also raise your hand and we'll give you a microphone to make your comment and ask your question. If you would like to be invited as a panelist or as a speaker, then please reach out to us on email, appnamerit@gmail.com. If you have someone you would recommend to be invited as a speaker or panelist or a topic that we should look a speaker for, please let us know. Send us an email on appnamerit@gmail.com. We're always looking for collaboration and networking. We would love to learn from you and involve you in this project and in this idea. With that, let me focus on to the topic for today. It's my pleasure to have our speaker, Dr. Junaid Bhatti, no relation with me, who is presenting today on this very, very important and useful topic of grant writing and funding mechanism in Pakistan. This is the cornerstone of research, the keystone that builds and creates research. And the previous topics we discussed on rely on this. This is how you actually go towards getting funding for implementing a research project. Dr. Janet Berti is a senior data scientist in Center of Excellence in Underwriting at Canada. He's a PhD qualified medical epidemiologist with over 15 years of experience in clinical research. He has been involved in grant writing for US and Canadian academic institutions for more than $2.5 million worth of funding. He has over 60 Medline Index publications and has served as an independent scientist at University of Toronto. He's currently working as a senior data scientist in one of the leading Canadian financial institutions and is involved in advanced healthcare data analytics and the development of machine learning and AI technologies, a topic which is becoming very hot. And I know a few people in the attendance who are extremely interested about this topic in particular. So he will cover in his presentation integration of innovation in everyday research and how to develop ideas and draft engaging research proposal. With that, let me invite Dr. Junaid Bhatti to add anything for his introduction, and please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to share my presentation and I'll ask if you are able to see it. Are you able to see the first slide?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm very grateful to APPNA Merit for giving me this opportunity to share my experience on funding mechanisms for health sciences research project. The target audience for this presentation are Pakistani origin physicians in US, Canada, as well as in Pakistan, and students in health sciences, undergraduate health sciences, who are aiming to obtain research funding to support their careers. So some of these topics may be broad, but overall their goal is to provide a very you can say, a bird's eye view or overall general understanding of how the research funding can be obtained. So my name is Janet Berti. So I completed my MBBS in 2003 from Rawalpindi Medical College. And then I had the opportunity to work in clinical side for almost 2 years. And then I moved on to complete an MSc and a PhD in public health and epidemiology. It was focused more on the road traffic injuries, but overall, I got the chance to work on clinical side with Aga Khan University, completing several projects there, and as well as then moving on to my postdoctoral studies at a mental health related institution affiliated with McGill University. So I spent almost 4 years there as a postdoctoral fellow. Doing that, I obtained funding for my postdoctoral studies and also for the research team, totaling about $2 million. And then I worked as an independent scientist at University of Toronto affiliated research center, which is also known as Sunnybrook Health Sciences Center. So it's one of the largest trauma care hospital in Toronto, and it was one of the premier trauma care center that ever existed in Canada. So it is very well funded and very well established trauma care research center. It also had the privilege to be affiliated with Institute for Clinical Evaluative Sciences, one of the main institutions where all the public, or you can say the Ontario healthcare data, comes at one place. So I got a chance to work with them as well. So overall, moving on from a physician to a master's to a PhD in postdoc has given me definitely a very good view of how the funding mechanisms work in Canada, US, and also in Pakistan in terms of how we can understand. I just want to make sure that the audience understands is that I'll be focusing more on the US and Canada side, but it basically helps you to understand that how we can, like, if Pakistan is going to be doing that, so they will also be following the overall mechanism and infrastructures that exist in these countries. So we learn from them as well. And the future funding will also be dependent upon how you understand those systems. Okay. So before I begin, I just want to make sure that I clarify. So I'm affiliated with a large private financial institution in Canada. It manages over $1 trillion of assets globally in 17 different countries. And I also manage a private post-secondary educational institution in Canada. It's co-owned by my wife. And I have supported grant writing and project management of different clinical research projects in the past. So none of these are currently directly related with this presentation, and I'm not I'm not benefiting from this presentation anyway, and I'm not seeking any support for this. So there's no conflict of interest currently. What are the learning objectives of this presentation? So the first of all, we are going to go through to understand the ingredients of a fundable research proposal. Again, I'm going to remain very broad, but make sure that you understand that what type of research proposals usually gets funding from a funding agency or organization. Secondly, I will describe the research funding mechanism landscape in countries like US and Canada. Obviously, I'm more familiar with here, but I'll explain that there are similarities of what exists in Pakistan at the moment and how you can obtain it. But overall, US and Canada, definitely, especially the US, offers a lots of funding opportunities where you can take the funding opportunity from US and you can collaborate and work with developing country like Pakistan. So there is definitely an opportunity to understand how the funding mechanisms work in the US. And lastly, we will focus on to understand how Pakistani physicians and health sciences students can pivot their projects for available opportunities in Pakistan and beyond, meaning obviously US and other countries. So things to consider. So let's begin this presentation by focusing on what things one needs to consider for finding a research proposal. As a health professional, we are by design doing research projects in our academic careers. Sometimes these research proposals are like randomized controlled trials that we are doing for our own careers. But those smaller studies often require large funding, and how we can get those funding is the main question for lots of us. So my talk today is going to focus on how we can understand what is a fundable research project or how we can obtain those fundings. So things to consider for those things. So the first question that we should ask or we should know more is that who funds the research? The first type of agencies or institutions that fund the research are government agencies, such as National Institutes of Health in the US, Canadian Institutes of Health Research, and the Pakistani equivalent of these institutions would be Pakistan Health Research Council, or PHRC. In the UK, it's Medical Research Council, and Australia, there's Australian Medical Research Council that exists. These are specifically government mandated agencies that fund research. They obtain the funding from the government and then they provide those fundings to the research and academic institutions and beyond for conducting research. The annual budget for NIH in the US is around $30 billion. It will increase under Biden administration. And the CIHR is usually around $1 billion. If you compare the budget of Pakistani Health Research Council, it's not that big. It's not that big before. More recently, more investments are coming to PHRC, and we can see that on last few of the last slides. The second group of funding that we can obtain, or agencies that fund research, are non-profit or large charity organizations. A good example for that would be Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So they have different types of funding streams, including grant challenges where they invest money for different ideas or research projects that can have a huge impact. An example from US would be Wellcome Trust. And there is another that I would like to bring forth is John Snow Inc. So that organization operates in Pakistan. So it's a large consultancy nonprofit firm that does research on health sciences as well as different development or health development related research projects. Relatedly, many corporations and multinationals, including pharmaceutical companies, they also fund research globally. So they may be doing different randomized controlled trials for their existing products portfolio or the new products globally. So they also fund research, and that can be an important way of securing research for your proposals or overall funding the research infrastructure in a university. For example, a university hospital in Pakistan could attract these large pharmaceutical companies to do the trials there, and that helps to fund the research departments there. So it's an important source to get overall funding. Then there are consulting companies, PwC, and other companies that do not directly do the research, but also are involved indirectly in terms of building the research infrastructure. So they are also involved. And then the device manufacturers, they get involved in doing research if they think that specific product can be tested quickly in a developing or low and middle income country settings. So all of these institutions fund research in different parts of the world. They also exist in Pakistan. They also fund research in Pakistan, but it gives you an idea of what types of organizations are funding research globally as well as nationally. Then we come to understand that what types of research that is being funded. It is very important to understand it because not every organization that I just mentioned funds all types of research. So the first group of research is the basic sciences. So the basic sciences is usually non-patient facing research. It can involve drug discovery or understanding disease mechanisms, mostly laboratory work. It can include anatomy, physiology, pathology, all of that stuff. Animal studies are also included in it. Biobanking studies are part of this study. So that can also be included in basic sciences. Then the second group of studies are the clinical studies that we are, as a physicians, are more familiar with. They're mostly usually patient-facing. Randomized controlled trial would be a good example for these studies. There can be also device trials. And we also be mindful that mental health and behavioral health studies are also part of these studies in which you are directly asking patients or their relatives sometimes different questions and getting the responses. So those studies will be counted here. So again, different organizations fund different types of studies. Basic sciences studies get a major chunk of funding from the government funding agencies that I mentioned, but also the clinical studies. Now, government funding agencies usually do not fund or do not put money into the studies that are about new pharmaceutical components or studies, because they expect that the pharmaceutical companies will put money there. So some of the clinical studies, they get funding from the government, but also they also get funding from the pharmaceutical companies or other organizations for those trials. And then comes the public health or interdisciplinary research studies. This is a very broad category. It may include different community health surveys that the public health agencies or government agencies conduct. It also includes health services research. So this is very important for us to understand what is the difference between a public health research and a health services. So public health is mostly about the surveys and in the community setting, but health services research is something that you can use administrative health records. For example, if someone is using their health cards, or in Pakistan now there is more trends of creating these health cards. So this will ultimately result in recording of different types of interventions that are given to a patient, where you can get age, sex, and the geographic location of that person. So you can in future understand that what are the different interventions that are being done for a specific age group of the patient. So these are called health services research, very much done in Scandinavian countries, in developed countries, Canada and US, less so done in the developing country setting, but it's mostly using the administrative healthcare databases. Then there are knowledge translation studies, also coming more and more towards the fundable side, because more and more funding agencies are interested to know that how the knowledge translation of their existing research could be improved. And more recently, like there is research on climate change that involves multiple disciplines. I've just put the title here to make you understand that interdisciplinary research may not only involve one discipline, but it can involve multiple disciplines. So what's the benefit of having the research culture? For example, why a health professional needs to learn research methods when designing research is complicated and getting funding is very competitive. So as you can see that I have put a picture of a very famous web series in the US called Dr. House. He's doing a differential diagnosis in the background to understand that how the different diagnoses should play out in terms of a clinical science. In the same sense, when we are seeing a patient in our practice, we see that there are different diagnoses that compete with each other. And we are testing hypotheses in our mind that whether this patient is suffering from this, and then we use all the individual patient data to make decisions whether that person should be given this X treatment or Y treatment. So research by design is part of what we do in clinical psych. So it's very important to learn those methods, and definitely understanding and spending time on this would be useful. And once you have more clarity and like you want to develop your own research topics, then that could be expanded further. So there are two things that I feel are very important in terms of understanding or making sure that when you are coming up with your own research idea, whether it is innovative and it's fundable or not. So it's my personal observation in many instances, we're looking at the different research proposals proposed by during you can say synopsis of FCPS, where physicians want to learn, or sometimes even from the developed country settings. I've seen colleagues from Pakistan who want to do some research and then they propose their research question, is that they often lack in either one or both of them. A scenario would be important for me to just explain what it is. For example, I've seen studies in which a physician wanted to assess the efficacy of a drug in Pakistan that was recently approved for treatment in the US. So if I have to look, okay, whether this type of research proposal is innovative or fundable. So in terms of innovation, if the drug has already been approved in the US, it means that it's not a new thing that you're planning to do. So obviously the innovation, I'll give probably 1 mark for that. But in terms of fundable, like who's going to fund if something's already known? Not many institutions would be interested to fund that type of research if the treatment is already approved in the US. You need to come up with a very good logic for that. Similarly, lots of research from Pakistan originates from audit studies of specific disease patients in a hospital setting, a very descriptive type of studies that usually is presented. So usually these studies are interesting. They may be interesting for a local level, but overall for innovation and seeking funding for that, I don't think that there will be people or there are organizations that would be interested to fund that type of studies, and it does not bring any innovation. Another scenario, assessing the efficacy of a skin treatment for psoriasis condition developed by a local biochemistry lab. So in terms of innovation, if that new treatment that has been developed, maybe some natural treatment or natural compounds that are usually available, in terms of innovation, if it has not been tested before, it will get more points. But again, in terms of fundable, so it will maybe interest, like the local organizations may be interested to fund it, but overall, you have to present a very good logic that testing this compound in Pakistan would have a huge impact internationally. So you have to think about whether this is innovative and fundable. So it will definitely get some points for innovation and some points for fundable. But again, you have to have a very good logic of having it being funded. Then the fourth scenario is that a multinational pharmaceutical company asks you to recruit patients for a trial for a totally new drug that they're doing in US and Europe. So it has both innovation component because they are doing the trial for the first time. They want you to be part of it. So there is an innovation component. And then since they're involved in the funding side, so it's fundable. So in that scenario, you have to figure out when you are trying to develop your own proposals or being asked to be included in a certain proposal, like how that proposal or that research question plays in terms of the innovation and being funded. Like who would be interested to fund it, whether it's innovative enough or not. So, and that will determine whether you will be able to get it funded or not. Another important observation that I have had with colleagues and I want to bring in this presentation is that many times the colleagues ignore that literature review is the backbone of an innovative research idea. So we often start with few lines. Okay, this drug, maybe cannabis is, for example, in Canada, cannabis becomes recently legalized. So there are ideas like testing cannabis in cancer patients or all of that. So that requires to do the literature review. Without literature review, you cannot assess the quality of your research question, what has been done before, and in terms of what will you bringing forth as new. If you look at the different research projects funded by NIH or CIHR, and if you look at the profile of those researchers, and if you look at their Medline index history, you will see that before being funded, those people have spent at least 2-3 years to clarify their research ideas, maybe through smaller research studies or conducting a literature review that is already published. So that is something that many funding agencies consider when they are taking on an idea that what type of literature review that this person has conducted. So it takes lots of time to conduct these literature reviews. Sometimes you have to work with your students and other people to get through those literature reviews, but they are worth it because then you can have a very clear idea of what the new research project might bring forth. These reviews can be of different types. Scoping review, very easy to conduct just using the Medline and overall scoping the literature and seeing what exists there. Sometimes some people write narrative reviews to explain their concepts. Systematic review and meta-analysis are relatively higher levels of the reviews, and they can be conducted before you clarify or you develop your own research proposal. Another important thing when you are considering to develop research proposals and fundable research proposals to make sure that that proposal get funding is the teamwork. Again, noted many times that when we are developing, and again, like many people try to create silos or work in silos when they're developing this. So the teamwork is very important. Obviously, the clinicians, the residents, fellows, they are the idea generator most of the time. They are the ones because for their academic careers, they want to do the research. But they need to also work with knowledge users, like who will be using those ideas or other allied health professionals. So all of them have to develop the ideas. They have to work with each other. They need to know the different administrative aspects of the grant. So sometimes you need to track all the records, you need to contact people, so you need to have proper administrative staff to support it. So you need to build those relationships. Without building that team, it's very difficult to get funding. Most of some of you who have already worked in the US, you may have observed that the teams that got funding, they have a very good infrastructure in place, or at least they try to utilize that. And sometimes some of the people who are coming new to the research, they can rely on those infrastructure to build that stuff. And it's mostly the duty of the responsibility of the institution to create that environment. But if it's not the case, then at least you should be knowledgeable that you cannot develop a research proposal in silo. You need people to peer review what you have written and go through that. So you have to build that team. Otherwise, it will be difficult for you to get to a fundable research idea. Budget is, I think, a very, very important point. I've not spent too much time here, but you need people who can budget a research proposal. I have written a piece on JPMA some years ago, just to explain that how you can develop a research budget. But overall, it's an important consideration. You also need biostatisticians. Sometimes you need to have the sample size calculated and all of that. So, and how to write the analysis section. So nobody is like master of everything. So you need to get these people on board, research technicians, people who can help you in the budget, and biostatisticians early on board, or at least try to make that team early on if you want to move on to get to the research funding. Letters of support is also very important. So when you're preparing research proposals, and you will see that when you're preparing for the full grants, they often require you to submit a letter of support. It could be from your supervisor, but it could also be from your collaborators. So you have to have a very good network to be able to get to the fundable research situation. And then obviously students and assistants play an important role in reviewing and helping you out with the research proposal. So overall, teamwork is very, very important in getting to a fundable research proposal. Now we have understood a little bit of what are the ingredients of a fundable research proposal. Let's understand the funding landscape in developed countries. And when I say developed countries, I'm mostly going to focus on the US and Canada, because I think there is a good opportunity that you can utilize the existing funding infrastructure in Canada and US, especially US, for getting funding for Pakistan. And I've been involved in such projects. So it's a very good opportunity. If you are have an academic position in the US university, you can become part of NIH. And then through that, there are specific streams where you can apply and get funding for doing your project, not only in the US, but also part of it in Pakistan. So let's start with Canadian funding agencies. So in Canada, as I said, like there are funding agencies that get the government money to do the research. So they get the money, but it's not their responsibility to keep the money. So they will have to disperse it to different academics and researchers in different universities. So in Canada, there are three main research agencies or councils. It's called Canadian Institute of Health Research, that focus primarily on the health. NSERC, which is a natural sciences and engineering research council that provides research for natural science and engineering. They sometimes have a collaborative research proposals with CIHR. So that's why you see this Venn diagram in which they have some collaboration with the CIHR on proposals that are multidisciplinary nature. And then there is the social sciences and health research councils, mostly on the psychological types of studies that usually are not part of health sciences. So they are dealt on the social sciences side. So these research councils get their separate funding. They have their separate programs of funding through which they disperse the money to the researchers for specific research projects, or maybe other related career grants. So Canadian funding agencies are not only these. So there are other funding agencies as well. I have provided a link here that will give you an idea of different funding agencies. The province of Quebec has their own 3 funding agencies separately. So not only the researchers in Quebec, where I was based before at McGill University, they had funding support from these 3 agencies, but also from the CIHR. So there's a big list available on this page in which you can find the different Canadian funding research agencies. Again, some of them are topic specific, such as you can see Alzheimer's Society or Heart and Stroke Foundation, and some are general that allows different types of funding to be considered. So overall, the CIHR looks into following main types of research funding. So they have divided in their own sense their research funding in 3 major types. One is you can go for a fellowship opportunities such as postdoctoral studies, doctoral studies, and master's studies. Some of the doctoral studies and postdoctoral are also open to international students, including Pakistan, so they can connect with a researcher based in Canada. If someone is doing a doctoral study in Pakistan, they can connect and see. And if and I've seen students coming from Pakistan here on a number of occasions to complete either the full or part of their study. So it's not undoable, and CHR usually makes it available. The Quebec, the province of Quebec also make it available for people to come for the fellowship. Then there are research grants. So this for physician level scientists or people who are at that level can opt to go for directly for the research grant. So there is something called operating grant or project scheme. So you can propose your own research proposal, and then you can go for those fundings directly. And then there are large grants. So sometimes they are more of building an infrastructure or a large team in the long run. So they are usually 5 to 10 years long funding. So that allows an established researcher to go to build their own team. They're also called team grants or foundation grants. And the expectation is that once that grant is completed, it will result in the team. So you can see that there are different opportunities. One allows you to focus more on the career. One allows you to just operationally focus on specific types of research project. For example, you want to test a new device or a drug that is well known for a new condition or combination of the drugs. So you'll be able to get through the research grants. And then if you want to build team and do multiple studies on a research topic, then you go for those team grants. Here's the list of US funding agencies. So as you are based in the US, the National Institute of Health usually gets about $30 billion. So they have invested in different institutes. So if you go to National Institute of Health, there is a list of all the National Institutes of Health funding available. So it's in the quick links, and you can say NCI is the National Cancer Institute. So all these institutes are fundamental in getting the research funding in the US, especially in the academic health sciences sector or academic research sector. It's a lot of money, and lots of money, and lots of people do apply for it. It's very competitive, but I feel that many Pakistani origin scientists or you can say clinicians, physicians, they have not been able to use or tap into these resources efficiently. Obviously, there are many who have done it, but I think there is a huge potential that can be used and leveraged here, where not only you can do the research or you can develop your own research proposal and apply to these organizations, but also be able to get funding for doing this part of that research project in Pakistan. So I think those who are based in the US should understand more of how an NIH funds the research and be able to be knowledgeable about it. I think I will have a later opportunity to discuss more about the Fogarty, but there is an institute called FIH, Fogarty International Center. So they specifically fund research for international research projects specifically. So they want US researchers to work with the developing country researchers. I think I'm getting late on time, so I just have to fast through quickly. Now, as I've shown you in the other slide, that different types of research grants that are available, in the same way, NIH also has those different grant or series. So research and other types are basically those project grants or operational research grants. Then there are individual research career development awards like K series. So if someone wants to become or opt for a scientist career, is already a physician in the US, so they can go for those K series grants. They are multi-year grants, and they allow you to sort of reserve your time so that you can learn while remaining as a physician to do the research, understand the research methods, and build your own team. So it's basically a career-focused grant. Then there are institutional research training and career development awards, so funding that is given to institutions so that they can build different teams. Sometimes they can launch different research projects or a suite of projects through that. Then there are individual fellowship applications. So that would apply. So someone who's in Pakistan who wants to do research in Pakistan with supervision from the US, so they can apply for it. Or if they want to move to US, do the research and come back, so they can go for this individual F series applications. So you have to be lookout for that. Interesting thing is that there are some open-ended research grants. They don't want you to be a citizen of the US or a permanent resident of the US to apply for those grants. They want to attract talent from everywhere in the world. So that's a very big thing from the part of the US to have these grants available for health researchers globally. Then there are multi-project applications, M series. And in the US, if you have a startup company and you're looking for funding, you can also have access to small business innovation research. Again, this applies to lots of people, especially physicians who have developed those companies to go for these types of grants. So I will speak more about the R01, R03, and R21. So in this one, this will be this R series grants. So just to understand that how these grants are. So normally R01, R03, and R21 are open for doing research in any jurisdiction. They do not stop you from doing going to any jurisdiction, except when they are submitted by, like, National Cancer Institute wants you to only do research in there, that's okay. But NIH will have an overall grant that will allow you to go and do research in any of those countries. R01 is a research project grant, R03 is a small grant, and then R21. So I was involved in one R21 grant about 2-3 years ago, and it allows you to build or develop an do an exploratory research grant, feasibility of a new research idea, maybe just testing that what you can do or build a research. If you want to build something like a health intervention, you can use this grant. R03 is also about pilot and feasibility studies. It gives you less money, but these grants are relatively easier to get as a Pakistani physician based in the US to do research either in the US or also do research in globally. Then we have the R01, the full-scale grant, that is to be able to do the research in like full sort of the research either in the US, and also if you want to do part of that research, R01 grant allows you gives you more money to do this research nationally or internationally. Okay. For writing these grants, it's also very important to be knowledgeable about what are the different sections of these grants. So these grants, writing these grants come with specific instructions that you have to have a project summary of 30 lines, project narrative, what would be the specific aims of that research grant, and what will be the research strategy. So normally a grant is somewhere between 5 to 10 pages of writing, but and there are supports available of how you write a project summary, how you write a project narrative. So it's very important to understand that what are the different grant components and how you can write it. The NIH grants also want you to have a biographical sketch of 5 pages. So you have to present all of your previous work. Even if you have done smaller projects with other people, you can present it in a very professional way. So it's very important to understand all of this because it helps you to secure the research grants in future, because if you don't understand these things, then it will be difficult for you to go for the fundable research proposals in the US. Usually, in terms of the research applications, you need to have a good proposal. You need to have a very good clarity on the budget. There are always attachments, as I said, like reference letters and other things. So you need to be clarified. Like sometimes they want you to fill some forms and make sure that those forms are signed by the other authorities within your institution. So they want those to be properly filled. There are specific text fields that needs to be filled. There are page limits that apply. There are data tables. Sometimes they want you to put like how many people you are going to recruit. So you have to put that information in a proper format. There are reference letters, bio sketches that you need to have for any successful research grant. Now I'm showing you these sections because you'll say why I'm showing this, because to make you understand that it is not very complicated and you need a proper team with you to build all of that. Okay. Yeah, so that is another thing that I want to bring forth. I did mention about the NIH Fogarty International Research Center. So for those of you who are based in the US or even in Pakistan, you should visit this page, NIH Fogarty International, and subscribe to their newsletter about funding. So there's a funding newsletter that is issued every week. So it comes in your email, and it gives you an idea of what type of what institutions are offering different international related research grants and how you can obtain that. And that will be provided in this NIH Fogarty International Research Center webpage. Also, not to forget, the United Kingdom, European Union, Australia, Qatar, and all other major countries, they also have global partnerships and research opportunities that they offer to basically, you can say, to build the collaborative research proposals globally with other researchers. So that is something that that you can also look for. Again, as a researcher based in the US or in Pakistan, you need to be knowledgeable about these opportunities, because you need to look for these opportunities mostly manually, and at regular intervals. You have to make a schedule that you're looking for these opportunities. Sometimes you will see that some grant deadline has passed, but don't forget that the year passes quickly. So you can make a note that next year you're going to be looking at this 3-4 months earlier, so that you are able to apply. So time is usually of essence when you're applying for a grant. Normally it takes around 3 months to 6 months to build an application. So even if you have missed anything, so if you want to apply for the next cycle of the grant, you can still prepare your applications for that and go forward and apply for the next cycle. Okay. So now I'm moving towards the last part of this slide deck, is what are the different national level opportunities that exist in Pakistan, where you can go for. And you will see that there are many similarities about funding mechanisms that what I've shown you in terms of the US and Canada, is that they're sort of a mimicked or mirrored in Pakistani institutions as well. So the first one that I want to bring forward is obviously well known in Pakistani settings, the Higher Education Commission of Pakistan. So they manage most, not all, of the funding that is for international research collaboration. So they have a full page on different types of foreign scholarships and national scholarships. So those scholarships often have some level of research funding that is available, so that you can go for those fundings along with your research collaboration. And then there are competitive research grants that are available. So there is another page that's available. So you can see that I've listed all the research challenges that, or the research application, you can say project research competitions that have been announced in the recent years, including Grand Challenge Fund, Local Challenge Fund, Technology Transfer Support Fund. So if you go on their webpage, they will provide you a full sort of instructions of how to apply. And again, you will see that those types of instructions would appear that they will have a different forms to fill, different types of CVs to be available, such as biosketches, and different types of partnership letters with different organizations would be required to complete those or apply for those research grant applications. So again, you need to be knowledgeable about these opportunities. There are some of the funding opportunities where the US government is funding those ones. For example, there is one called PARC-US Joint Research Program. It is usually after every 2-3 years. So you need to be like at least be knowledgeable and knowing that when these fundings would come in, because sometimes they come in, they need US researchers to work with the researchers in Pakistan. So you maybe some of you have done the work here, and you're going back to different medical schools back home to deliver other types of training. So you can use this opportunity to fully understand or maybe apply for those specific research opportunities that can come through this opportunity, this specific grant competition. So you have to be knowledgeable about these things, that where you should be looking for, and then sort of monitoring those web pages to see that whether there's a new competition that is on or not. Fogarty definitely provides you an update if they are launching any new competition. There are notices that goes out, less so in the Pakistani setting, but overall these are Higher Education Commission has most of the grants that are usually available for doing health sciences research. For researchers in Pakistan specifically, obviously there is a National Research Council that funds research, but specifically for health research, there was a Pakistan Medical Research Council, PMRC. Now the name has changed to PHRC, Pakistan Health Research Council. So they have revised the funding limits. Previously, it was, I think, ₹500,000 that was allocated in the previous in the Medical Research Council previously, but now they have increased that. Again, you have to be in contact with the Pakistan Health Research Council to understand what type of fundings will be available or are available, or when they open up. Usually they will send you the information that when the fundings open up. So most of the health research, because they're not very well announced, people don't know about them, but once you contact them, you get the information when will be the next cycle how they are accepting the application per 4 months or per 6 month cycle. So you can prepare your application and submit it. Again, this is more applicable for people who are only based in Pakistan. If those, like I understand that APPNA has most of the audience for the APPNA is based in the US. For them, I think understanding Fogarty, understanding NIH will definitely help. And again, the colleagues who understand these things are not very far. So you can contact people within your institution or medical university, those who have obtained funding for the national projects in the US and also international projects at what they have done. And you will see that they will look for innovation. They will look for fundable nature of that project. They will try to build those teams and propose those research projects. So overall, what I want to sort of go through this presentation is to make sure that the audience understands that you cannot build these research proposals in isolation. So you need to break those silos, talk to people that you want to do this research, how you can do it. Literature review is the next big step, that you will have to spend your own time to understand what is the different types of research on a specific topic are available. And if you are proposing anything, how that would be different from previously and how different people can benefit. So the literature review definitely helps you in understanding the impact of your future research. Networking is very important. So you, again, when you submit a proposal, it does not get reviewed automatically in a sense that this person is submitting research from specific university in the US. So you need to have a very good network. People should know you. So that helps you sort of build that positive vibe when the research application is being seen. And networking also helps you to get those partnership letters. So if you do not have that network, but it is local level, you can get the partnership letters from, maybe if you're doing research on cancer, different cancer groups, you can get that information, that their letters, so that it helps you to propose your projects. Then you have to do an active search of opportunities. Nobody's going to tell you that this grant is open, apply for it. So you have to make sure that you are spending time on it and understanding what type of opportunities are opening up. And lastly, perseverance, I think, is the main part of getting any research funding. Research careers globally are not well funded. So many researchers who only dedicate their life to research, they're not well funded. So they have to persevere. They have to face a lot to get to the funding. So if you want to do research as a clinician, obviously it's easy for you to focus on the patient care and have a very satisfying sort of a career. But overall, I've seen people who have spent time, have done the hard work, and persevered. They had more things to do. It becomes more, um, you can say mentally exciting for them to be involved in research as well as patient care. So I understand that most of you maybe in your 30s, 40s or 50s and saying, okay, why I should be doing the research? But I think if you do the research, it will definitely help you. And I've seen careers prolonged beyond 65 years. Sometimes I've seen people who become professor emeritus to be still working in their 80s, late 80s, and have a university affiliation at that time. So definitely, if you spend and invest time in this area, it has some rewards in the end, along with your patient care. So with this, I would like to thank you, the administration of APPNA and Dr. Ozair for giving me the opportunity to present on this forum. I understand this is a very broad presentation, but it is intended for you to give an overall view of the research funding mechanism in US, Canada, and in Pakistan.
Thank you, Dr. Junaid, for this very nice comprehensive presentation. Let me repeat some of the house rules before I go on to some of the questions and invite some of the panelists. A reminder to everyone that this activity is approved for CME, for AMA Category 1, ACCME certified CME from APPNA through the support of APPNA RISA committee. So I'm really thankful to them for providing the support for expenses for the CME and offering it for free to all our audience and participants. We are tracking everybody's attendance automatically in Zoom, and we will issue the certificate once a quarter based on the programs that you attended. More than 45 minutes of participation is required to be counted as present for that particular activity. We would love to hear from you, your comments, your questions. You can raise your hand if you would like to have the microphone. and introduce yourself and make any comments or ask any questions. You can also feel free to chat your comments in the chat box. If you have any questions specific to us, you can write to us at appnamerit@gmail.com about this topic or previous topics. You can find all the recordings of these sessions on YouTube, and previous one and current one. And we are glad that you could join us. So I have a lot of questions here, but let me start by giving opportunity to my panelists, the chairs of various APPNA committees, to see if they have any particular comment or if they would like to introduce themselves. Please go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hand and I can call you in a queue. Does anyone of you in our panel have any question, comment? Ji, Dr. Babar.
Gee, I see a few questions coming on the chat where basically why don't we have a collaborative effort and why don't we do this and this? In that reference, Danish has already asked me and a couple of us here, Uzair, to make a working group. Our first meeting is tomorrow morning. And basically the idea is to summarize all these things and see where the difficulties are and what the resources are and what are the possible solutions in reference to if APPNA or North American doctors trying to help. So we'll come up with that document in few months' time. But I just wanted to let everybody know that we are on it and we'll get some good document out in a few months. Thank you.
Anybody else in the panel before I go with some questions?
Yes, this is Mary Morton. I'm one of the staff cardiologists, and we do have a lot of clinical research going on in our hospital, and I'm a PI of a few clinical research. Research doesn't start in a vacuum, as you mentioned, but every case becomes an interesting case. And if you look at the ancillary studies that are being included in major clinical trial, if we can get involved in those ancillary trials, that opens up the door for further research and further collaboration with other people. Thank you.
Dr. Sarvit, you had a comment?
Gee, thank you very much. This is really extremely useful and hopefully profitable presentation. My question was that, is there a body that can fund a project to develop and enhance the quality improvement system in Pakistan in healthcare? And that is something that is needed for our country.
If the question, yeah, so in the recent past, under previous government, provincial government in Punjab, so they came up with the authority, because you need to have two things. So one is doing the research and one is to have a legal structure that implements or the research. So I think there is a legal authority, at least at the level of Punjab, where quality improvement is important. In terms of doing research only, there is an opportunity to do research, because in US there is called AHRQ. I'm not forgetting what the acronym is, but it's focused more on the health sort of institutions research, its quality, something like that. So it allows you to develop those quality frameworks within the US settings. You can definitely get funding from the US side to do some of those or test some of those things in Pakistan. But ultimately, it's the responsibility of the ministries, provincial ministries of health, to implement those research quality standards. So I think Punjab has a good example. So and I've seen people working or sort of developing those collaborations directly with the people in those institutions. And again, they have a very like you can say a merit-based hiring system initially, that when they recruited people. So I think that is possible. So again, that involves health administrators to work with clinicians here in US or Canada, North America, and globally, with them to see that whether they can propose specific research projects or they can guide them in that process. So again, as I said, the possibilities are becoming more and more, because they are also formed committees and where they want people like you to participate in them.
Can I just follow up just a few seconds?
Sure.
In fact, I have a long personal experience in trying to develop and implement quality in healthcare in Pakistan. And at this time, at least, the system is not mature enough to have any impact on the healthcare. And I think tomorrow night or Monday night, we're talking about this at this forum. We'll talk more about it. But system, in short, really doesn't work very much. Thank you.
Sure. Dr. Malik, Dr. Badal Malik, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. In fact, Dr. Junaid has extensively presented research networks and programs in North America and Canada. I just want to comment on the part of his presentation regarding clinical research aspect if conducted in Pakistan. By and large, I have already shared in previous presentations and lectures as well that now Pakistan is a good avenue for pharmaceutical research, for particularly phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials. Especially for NDAs and generation of indigenous research data in this part of the Asia. And for this purpose, various multinational pharmaceutical companies are now approaching Pakistan for conduction of these trials. So, in this aspect, our clinicians who are based in North America or Canada, they can coordinate with various pharmaceutical companies, and TRAP is very much there to facilitate for the approval of these clinical trials in collaboration with Pakistan Health Research Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Malik. Kindly, everyone, if you raise your hand, please leave it raised. Otherwise, if you lower it again, then I forget who raised their hand and who had any comments. So, Dr. Junaid, are there any available online resources like templates for a good structure of what a successful grant looks like, or a writing looks like, or each funding sponsor have their own structure that you have to follow eventually. But just to look at quality of writing or good quality writing, what's a well-built specific aim, what's a well-built hypothesis, are there resources or templates or examples to review?
So normally if you are based in US, so if you have a successful colleague who has just got an R01 or R23, so you can ask them to provide you the research proposal. That will serve you a good base. NIH definitely has made those available. What I have learned during my postdoc and beyond is that the previous proposals definitely help you to understand how the grant writing is written. I've spent more than 7 years of my life just to understand how the good grants are written. And I'll tell you that it's not very easy. Like it's part art and part sciences. You need to be very good in writing because and one of my supervisors usually explains me in this way that you will have a person on a weekend where he has to take care of all his family, and then in that he will maybe going to find 2 hours of time to review your proposal. So if your proposal is not written like a very good novel, nobody's going to read it. So you have to have that arts and sciences happening that in your proposal, and it comes with time. So you have to spend more time in writing. And that's why often we start our careers in writing research, a publication, and then we move on to slowly to research, good research proposals. So it takes time, but if you can get your hands on the proposals that are previously written in the recent times, it would definitely helps you for the specific competitions that how people are presenting their topic, and you can use that language a little bit to get to those proposals. Again, research proposal is not like if you are copy pasting a specific paragraph from some place into your research proposal, it's not like plagiarism, because research proposals are not research publications per se. So you can also use good sentences written by someone else in your research proposal to make it more succinct and coherent.
Thank you. Dr. Gailani, you have your hand raised, my professor. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bhatti. It was a very good presentation. Actually, I just want to add that request for application that is known as RFAs, they are always available at NIS site, and they are very well like a guided document how to start and how to develop your different aims and goals. And the only thing is language has to be very concise. And as Dr. Bhatti said, writing and concise language is the key. But every funded research is like very strong RFA, and just follow the RFA, and hopefully with good language we can get that based on good hypothesis.
Very good. Thank you. I just want to quickly highlight for people who may not be familiar that in our earlier webinars, we talked about clinical trials in CROs and things like that. So there is kind of two major separation between clinical trial. One is what we call industry-sponsored research, where industry comes up with an idea, they are the sponsor, and they're looking for clinical trial sites or PIs at different sites. And that's where Dr. Malik also highlighted that there is a huge potential for phase 2, phase 3 clinical trial research in Pakistan, but most of them are industry sponsored. So the grant writing does not come into play as much. It's more of, are you qualifying as a clinical site or not? And that's a different kind of discussion on in how you fill out the site invitation questionnaire or civ forms and so on and so forth, and qualify as a site. But there is this whole arm of what we call investigator initiated trials, investigator initiated studies, and often they are pilot projects, but they lead to the phase 2, phase 3 studies later on. So for example, in talking about clinical context, if I am using a drug like amantadine for Parkinson's disease, and I think that it can be useful for freezing of gait, it currently does not have a label for use as a freezing of gait, then I can do an investigator initiated trial starting with a pilot project on 10 patients, 20 patients, and that's where grant writing or funding mechanism kick in, that I need to prove the idea, and then I go towards an industry sponsor, or it may continue to be an NIH sponsored study. Some clinical trials, especially if there is not a lot of benefit for industries, like the drug is already on the market, is as generic, then those are often funded by NIH. So some of the clinical trials in Parkinson's, for example, some of the largest one were actually funded by NIH. But then if you have an idea, you have to come up with a proposal on what you want to study, and we can discuss what those values are. Circling back on some of the questions that come in, Dr. Junaid, do you have personal experience of working with funding agencies in Pakistan, such as HEC? How tough they are, how difficult that field is, how competitive it is, how those mechanisms are more unique or different there in Pakistan compared to US or North America?
So I have helped colleagues to apply to HEC a number of times, including also because I'm based in Canada, so also on the NIH side. It is competitive, and I have also on some occasions helped. And there's in Qatar also they have a very good research funding organizations to apply. It is very competitive, and you need to build, like when I'm working on these collaborations, the team in Pakistan needs to have very strong partnerships. So getting partnership letters is usually a requirement for most of these grants, because they are not they require you to have those partnerships in place. So that has been a very big challenge for HEC side. Again, I have not done much, but overall, I think if you have written a grant, and I've seen people who have written grants in the US side already been successful. So if they go to HEC related grants, and for example, for this PARC US collaboration, they've got it easily. So that definitely helps, that sort of approach to it. Most of the HEC grants will be more available to people who are based in Pakistan at the moment. So it has to be initiated by them. If it's an HEC indigenous opportunity, same goes with the Pakistan Health Research Council. But I think for this audience, especially most of you are based in the US, I think understanding how Fogarty works, it will definitely help you, because they have lots of funding opportunities open directly through Fogarty or through the other institutes within the NIH that are open if you are proposing any specific research project. So I think the last time that they sent a list, there were like at least 30, 40 different open competitions in which foreign entities are eligible to apply. So that is a big thing.
Okay. I am going to take a couple of questions and combine them together. I think Dr. Umar Hayat asked this question about if you are writing a project which has an industry collaboration or partnership, does that have any positive or negative impact on the grant application? And then I will tie in with it one of the earlier questions Dr. Morton raised about are there examples of research that come to your mind that may be able to be conducted in Pakistan and are both fundable, innovative ideas that you may have heard from somewhere or have in the back of your mind? If you want to cover those two questions.
Okay, so the first question is in terms of having this industry partner. So if industry partner is putting in some money, that definitely helps the funding agencies such as NIH to see that this is not just an oral partnership or just like just saying that we are partner. Rather, they want to put the money where their mouth is. So if they are able to do so, that definitely helps. Sometimes NIH is also interested in funding if a non-profit organization is also funding a part of that research. So that applies to both NIH and CIHR. So if you can show in your grant that you're applying for 1 million, but maybe $10,000 to $20,000 have been put up with someone else by someone else, they will see that as a positive thing. So I would say that that would be interesting. One thing that we need to be mindful is that if that project it leads to a development of an IP that can then benefit that company in return, then probably the CHR and NIH will look into that thing in more sort of a detail, that they should not be funding a private company to do their work. So it has to be beneficial. Like if they do that in a specific, so there's a small business funding available, they do that separately, but in a sense that it also brings a larger impact. For example, the development of Moderna vaccine and all these vaccines. So US invested $10 billion in Moderna initially, just to make sure, because they knew that there's going to be benefit for everyone, and it actually resulted in benefit. So they are open, but you have to be like tactfully deal and also show that the company is also putting in money. So that's number one. Second question. So I have helped colleagues at AKU John Hopkins to get a grant on basically seeing whether how we can improve the treatment of severe hypertension and emergency department, developing a checklist and seeing whether that checklist would work. So when we are developing that research proposal, so I was at AKU presenting this sort of a very detailed version of what I presented today. And during that, one of the physicians in the emergency department asked me that you are presenting, you want to do the research on, I was proposing a trauma project, but she sort of brought in that hypertension, we don't know anything. And then we spend more time on understanding, okay, has anyone done any research on severe hypertension related checklist, or in US, nobody has done it. So those types of ideas where things have not even done in US, if you are able to sort of bring that for those projects that will not only benefit US but also developing countries, those are the projects that NIH are definitely looking for. So that's and there are many, like you cannot say that they do not exist. So if you look in pediatric side and other specialties like management of sepsis in the pediatric population, you will see that there are lots of other ideas that have not been worked up properly and on the US side, and sometimes you can propose a project in Pakistan saying that the findings from the project in Pakistan would not only benefit Pakistan but also other countries. So that those are projects have a higher likelihood of getting a positive note.
Thank you, Dr. Junaid. And let me add a bonus example of my personal involvement in a project in Pakistan. So the idea was that patients with Parkinson's disease, when they take medications like dopamine agonist or ropinirole, then they have, some of them have impulse control disorder, which is a very bad side effect. 30% have it. And currently there is no way to predict who's going to get it or not. The idea proposed, which is what's innovative in Pakistan, was that is the genetic status of metabolism rate of that drug. And so some people metabolize the drug fast, some slow. So metabolizer genetic status, does that alter your risk of developing that side effect or not? So that's a very unique thing. It's very fundable. It's very innovative, and it has a practical implication that you could do a screening and you can check the metabolizer status of that patient and decide if the patient should or should not go on dopamine therapy, if the risk is higher or lower, and you can stratify the risk. And that, that has a large implication because that will be true for anywhere in the world. So that was a very interesting idea from Pakistan that was proposed and that I supported and helped develop a little bit from my side. Dr. Savat, let me come back to you in a minute. Let me first take Dr. Tasleem, because I think she also has an idea she wanted to run by. Dr. Tasleem, please go ahead.
Yeah, I can very appreciate to arrange a very important workshop for us. I have one question to Dr. Janet Berti. I have the one innovative product that is patented in Pakistan. I treat the basic research and conduct to some clinical observation on local wound in treatment in Pakistan for different burns and bed sores. So I always treat the many patients up to 10 years. I treat the 7 to up to 7,000 patients. So we develop these products and we give the many opportunity to commercialize these products. But the no industry in Pakistan give me a chance to collaborate us to because the industrial mindset is the very non-innovative because the rule follows the US patents and European patents, but our natural product resources are much high. I am also working on cancer drug from developed from the marine resources, but here the industrial collaboration is very poor. So can you arrange some network to the industrial collaboration in Pakistani innovative product? And how can Pakistani patent products to commercialize in USA and how can collaborate to the because it is huge funding required. The US patents fees is so much high. How can work these things? So can you brief me and guide us?
And Dr. Taslim, just to be clear, are you talking about a herbal product or a specific compound or molecule based a new molecule, or can you explain the product?
We lot of natural products available from
natural. So herbal therapies you're talking about, right?
Our marine resources have a lot of compound to use as a drug resources, and our botanical flora have a lot of compounds, and other natural products have a lot of potential to treat to market to form new drugs. So
right. So thank you. Yeah, I think I want to just be clear that when you take a new compound that you've discovered and you want to establish a pharmaceutical role of that, then that has to go through the bench research that we have not even touched on yet before you can even consider a human trial or human use. While you can bypass all of that if you're doing a herbal product and you say, okay, this is not a pharmaceutical, this is a natural therapy or herbal therapy, and just plant extract or something, or marine algae extract or something, then you don't go into individual compounds, you just use the extract and you have it bypasses all of that FDA requirement regulation. So those are two separate tracks or things that we're talking about. Let me take input from Dr. Junaid, and I think our dermatologist in-house also probably has a comment on it. Dr. Junaid.
Yeah, so I think, again, I'm not the best person to form this network. Usually it's the responsibility of the local institutions to arrange the commercialization. But overall, if you want to still pursue these ideas, you will need to connect people in the North America. So you need a funder or sponsor within the pharmaceutical sectors who would take your idea and get it patented. Without US patent, I think it would be very difficult to move forward. Like your product will remain in Pakistan. So that's an unfortunate truth, but that's what it is. That you have to understand that US patent system is one of the strongest patent system globally, and it gives the protection to everyone. So that's how you will have to proceed through it. So you have to, as I said, persevere in your idea and continue with it. Keep testing, keep collecting the data, and keep connecting with people who have the money on the US side to come up with it, and make sure that even that your publications and everything, it sort of validates that you are the main idea promoter, so that no one sort of takes it away from you.
You, Dr. Babar?
Yeah, so I already wrote in the chat that Samia should email me. We are working with a burn center in Pindi, which were raised by our Rawalpindi Medical College graduates, and I have a research on burn scars right now in that center. So Samia, maybe if you write me an email, I can have a separate meeting with you through APPNA Merit, platform, and I can discuss further.
Dr. Sarwat, you had a comment earlier. Please unmute yourself.
I think there is a tremendous opportunity in developing AI tools in healthcare. especially chatbots and especially like AI virtual doctor to help with those areas where doctors are not available and to treat common diseases. So my question is that, Dr. Junaid, which organization might be approached to develop these kinds of tools? Thank you.
It's a good question. So I think Fogarty last year had some of the projects that were aligned with it. They still have someone for Africa. So maybe the US researchers will have to work with Africa to get that funding. But even if you don't have anything at the moment, you can start with R21 or RO3 grant system. They are open. You can apply. If you're based in US, you can apply and present your idea to them that what you want to do, and then move on to RO1. It is a very competitive field. Many companies have already jumped into this one to figure out how they can do, especially from the US side, because US is in healthcare industry in the US is very, very big. So they are trying to figure out what the next level of innovation is, and they sort of are zeroing in on AI technologies, especially how they can facilitate, sort of a speed up the processes in the medical office, and then from there on also like how they can identify using AI technologies who will be the high users of the healthcare resources in the US. So it's a very hot topic. So you'll need to work with some of the specialist people in that area. You'll need to have the IT support to develop that proposal. But if you want a relatively, you can say, easier path, then probably collaborating on focused funding opportunities that have been issued by FIH, which is Fogarty International Center, or different like National Institute of Health Research centers, because if it's academically, then they are the best suited to get the funding.
If I may, the question really is for our environment, language is something that makes it very unique. Language and culture makes it very unique for us to develop our unique applications that cannot be translated from other languages and other cultures. So that makes, I think, the project to be, and I would very strongly recommend to Dr. Danish and Dr. Babar Rao to put together a group where we can take advantage of this upcoming technology. Thank you.
Professor Noorbert, please go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience who may not know you very well, and then ask your question and comments. You're unmuted, but we're not able to hear you, Professor Noor. You are unmuted, but somehow your microphone probably is not connected with Zoom, or you're using a different microphone. Kindly check that. I'm gonna ask one more question while we wait for you. So one of the ideas that have come up here too, and we have discussed in our research meeting too, Dr. Junaid, is some form of mentorship to people who are trying to put together research ideas or a proposal, even if they're not applying for a grant. Just putting together a grant application really tells you what your idea is. Is it going to fly or not? Does it make sense for it or not? And many other applications, such as application for approvals from IRB, look very similar. Similar kind of information and detail is needed to answer this. One of the thought in research committee that we have been tossing around and is that should we have a platform where people can pitch their ideas and give them feedback? For example, I even proposed a thought of something like a Shark Tank, where you submit a one-page summary, we select the 10 best proposal, give them 5 minutes, 10 minutes to pitch to a panelist their idea, and then get grilled on it to figure out what are the weak links, what are the missing areas, and things like that. Do you know of any similar ideas? Are there templates that we can follow, or successful proposals that have done, or mechanisms that have worked before?
So if I am the decider on APPNA merit, and if I want to pursue similar mechanism, I'll first make sure that I get some seed funding available so that you can get the competitive ideas from Pakistan, in which the researchers from APPNA could collaborate in future. It should not be more like $5,000 per proposal. You can say you're going to fund up to 5 proposals. $25,000 is not a big amount of money. So you can get up to, like, you can pre-screen and then invite people to come to propose. You don't want them the full proposal, maybe one page summary. You invite maybe 15 people, and out of 15, maybe about 5 people. So if that type of, and that seed funding would go into what they want to develop in future, and then that would also build that collaboration and also the application in the next process. So I think if you can do this stepwise, it would work, and not a big investment to get to that point. And again, like, since you have a charity status, I think APPNA has in the US, so that allows you to invest your own money in a sense that you're going to get anyways tax credits. At least I know that from the Canadian side, if you have a charity, then you can put in the money, and then you could put it to a good use. So I think if you ask me, I can write you a stepwise how I will conceive these ideas to make it more efficient. So you select 5 ideas that APPNA would work or develop in the next 2 years. You give everyone $5,000 to just develop that sort of a baseline, whether this is a good idea to pursue, and then you can go forward from there.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Danish, am I here?
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be interacting with the community of international physicians. I'm a physicist. I've spent all my life as in the Atomic Energy Commission as Director General of INSTEC, nuclear methods. So I'm interested in the interdisciplinary research. And recently, I introduced the concept of nanotechnology in Pakistan some 20 years back. It's coming up. And now recently, for the last 1 year, I'm interested in nanomedicine. And in this concept, this revolution is coming. These nanoparticles are being used extensively in various aspects of medical healthcare. That includes improved resolutions of MRI, the better working on the, we have recently in the project of reducing the inflammation due to cytokines and macrophages of the blood samples of the cardiac patients in collaboration with the Shifa Hospital. And using nanoparticles of gold, magnesium oxide, and zinc oxide, we observed the reduction in inflammation by about 40%. It's very, very new and novel idea. So I'm interested if in your systems, there are provisions for grants for new novel ideas, new technologies, which are, becoming very popular. For Pakistan, the funding is not very much, but in the international scenario, are there some organizations that such projects could be funded? Maybe Professor Janet Berti can.
Yeah, so I think, like, if you are in a deciding institution in Pakistan, so you can, because it's always tough, but if you are able to follow people who have published research in this area from the US, and if you are able to find some Pakistani link there, that would work. Sometimes you can also write people that you are working on this technology, you have a good health facility available. Is there a way to work for this idea from the US? I've seen international researchers in the US, sometimes they don't have enough patients even. So they are open to work with other organizations, given that once they have established a good relationship. It takes around, in my opinion, between 2 to 5 years to develop that, even that sort of a collaboration, because you have to start connecting with them. They see what you do, and then they sort of connect with you, and then move on from there. COVID has made things complicated because you don't have enough conferences happening. But sometimes, like, participating in the conference in the US also helps you to connect with people and to know what they're doing. I've seen generally the US physicians, Pakistani origin or not, are very open to innovation, and they are open to work with anyone if they feel that there is a good merit behind it.
Okay, thanks so much.
Very good. I think we can start wrapping it up here. Let me see if there's any other burning question that we should cover. There were a couple of thoughts, not necessarily questions, that came to my mind, that I wonder if there are a central repository in Pakistan somewhere which list available funding mechanisms, locally available resources to go to. You mentioned quite a few, but it's still, you have to individually go to those resources to try to figure out what are they offering, what's there. But that I think those could also be potential opportunities for merit to support development of some central place, and may be at NIH, which seems a natural place for these kind of resources to be present, and maybe we can contribute.
Dr. Danish, may I indicate one thing?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, you see, Pakistan Science Foundation is one organization which is recently not very big funding, but they have a variety of funding the project for a long time. I was at one time a chairman of the Pakistan Science Foundation some years back, and we were supporting a lot of research, but the funding is not very much as on the international level. That is what I asked Mr. Junaid about. But still, to keep alive the research in the different universities and centers of learning in Pakistan, Science Foundation has been putting up quite encouraging grants for many years. The other source of funding which we are using, again, a few million rupees, not very big, is the Academy of Sciences, Pakistan Academy of Sciences, but you have to be a fellow of the Pakistan Academy of Sciences too. That I'm using a few grants, but not very much. But international funding is important. At one time, I had about $175,000 grant from IDRC Canada, but that was in the very beginning to use the nanotechnology in industries, not in the medical. So there somebody approached me from the Canadian IDRC way back in 2004 and 2005. And they funded, it was a giant project of India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka on the use of nanotechnology in the industry of these countries. Mm-hmm. So, but I'm these days interested in the nanomedicine, and because that's a very open and very public-oriented field, and I think we are trying to encourage. Thank you very much.
I would also say that you need to, like I've presented one page on the Medical Research Council of the UK. So in the UK, they have put, like they have revamped their research funding sort of infrastructure, making sure that all the information is available at one portal. So I would encourage you to also use, see in the UK side, because sometimes they have a more active collaboration with Pakistan, given Pakistan is one of the Commonwealth countries.
Incidentally, I'm a graduate of Birmingham University. I did my PhD in 1965 from Birmingham University, and Doctor of Science 1993, some years later. So, but being a physicist, I was never in contact with the medical field, but I'll try that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I think I would like to conclude here with just one last comment from my side. I see someone posted here concerns about that information is useful, but it's may not be applicable to Pakistan due to lack of resources. And I think one thing we should be clear on, that it's not just internal resources, which there are many, and hopefully we can grow them as our economy grows. But there are resources internationally available that are being accessed by other countries like India very thoroughly. So there's millions of dollars that is being moved into places like Africa and India, because they're making an effort to go and get those resources and use them for research. And that's where we should also look for and try to bring those resources to Pakistan, because we have excellent research that we can do in Pakistan. So with that positive note, hopefully, let's conclude the session here today. And thank you so much to our speaker, Dr. Janet Berti, for taking the time out again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Junaid. And I already mixed up two Bhattis and sent the wrong message to the wrong Bhatti, but that's okay.
Okay, that's okay.
Thank you, Dr. Junaid. I think it's a very